The Human Torch has finally arrived, and his kit makes him an instant area denial hero, but we almost guarantee everyone will play him wrong, at least to start. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and here's how you make full use of the newest hero in Marvel Rivals, Johnny Storm, also known as the Human Torch. We were lucky enough to go hands-on with the Human Torch and the Thing a few days ahead of the Midpoint Season 1.5 launch, and you can check out our video for the Thing already live on the channel. That being said, we wanted to make sure you got off to a fast start with both characters when the update goes live for everyone on February 21st. The Human Torch has a really interesting kit, and while he's labeled as a 3-star character, he isn't really that hard to get a handle on and play effectively. If you're someone who gravitates to characters that specialize in area denial, damage over time effects, and burst damage, it's very likely you'll get your flame on for this latest edition. His skills do have a bit of nuance that elevate him into that 3-star difficulty, and while his kit is easy to grasp, that doesn't mean it's easy to master. In fact, you'll come to learn very quickly where the Human Torch's limits lie. With that in mind, let's dive in and pick apart every one of the Human Torch's abilities. Believe it or not, one of the most fundamental skills you need to get a handle on is left click fire cluster. This launches out a cluster of splitting fireballs that function like a shotgun blast. At close to medium range, these will stay more bunched up and do higher, more concentrated bursts of damage, making the Human Torch a real threat if he gets the jump on you. However, past the 20-meter mark, they will do little more than lightly tickle all enemies in the spread. Understanding at what range you should be using what skills to be most effective while remaining safe due to your low health pool is honestly 99% of the learning curve with this character. Your right click, on the other hand, Blazing Blast, is a versatile charge-based projectile that actually has a really quick recharge rate. This allows you to launch a fireball that can either directly strike an enemy or hit the ground and create a flame field, dealing AoE damage over time to any enemies nearby. You'll notice 3 flames that swirl around the Human Torch, and every time you cast one of these blazing blasts, those swirling flames will reflect it. This is a skill you'll be using constantly due to its high uptime and ability to really make areas of the battlefield annoying to fight around, since the damage over time from these, especially stacked, can really add up. Blazing Blast really gets put to use whenever the next ability, Pyro Prison, is off cooldown. When there are at least 2 or more flame fields on the battlefield, casting this ability will dynamically connect them and form a firewall that will deal one-off high damage to enemies that pass through the threshold. If you manage to arrange 3 or more flame fields on the ground that end up creating an enclosed shape, such as a triangle or square, any enemies within the boundaries of this field will take continuous damage. This is one of the main nuances with his kit. There are a couple things to understand with how these firewalls are constructed and what actually counts as an enclosed shape. The flame fields will always form lines to each other regardless of where they're placed, but if a wall or elevated terrain intersects that wall, the enclosed field will not be treated as actually being enclosed, and no dot damage will occur to enemies. Because of this, you want to make sure you aren't allowing walls, stairs, ramps, edges, or interactable terrain elements to intersect your flame field placement, or you'll end up wasting a decently long cooldown when you cast it. Sometimes a tiny enclosed shape in a small area is more beneficial than trying to blanket an entire choke point if it risks nullifying the ability's effects entirely. That being said, on larger control points where there are less obstructions, this ability combo can tip a point fight heavily in your favor and even bait out other strong defensive abilities to keep the enemy team alive. If that happens, you are absolutely doing your job with this ability. The whole name of the game with the Human Torch's kit is to nullify the safety of an enemy position and keep them moving around. This keeps an enemy team from hunkering down in critical choke points and makes you a real nuisance that they're forced to deal with. You may get the occasional kill or two with this ability, but by and large, your job is to disrupt their positioning and break their focus. Your left shift ability, Plasma Body, is a glorified aerial sprint. Yes, this does allow you to move forward faster while you have the energy, but the real use here is activating it in short bursts to move from side to side or ascend quickly behind cover, avoiding enemy attacks. Next, we have Flaming Meteor. As I mentioned before, the Human Torch is really squishy. You can't take too many direct hits from enemies before you die, but here's the thing. This ability lets you dive towards the ground and deal damage to enemies you come into contact with. Now, at first glance, that might seem a bit counterintuitive as a squishier hero, but let's look deeper. This ability really has two different use cases: the aforementioned diving into groups of enemies that are low health in hopes of finishing them off, or to disengage from a fight in the air and duck into cover on the ground. This will legitimately save your life. Just be aware, you can only perform this move when you are a certain distance above the ground. Flaming Meteor also has a cool synergy with flame fields. If you perform a Flaming Meteor dive onto an active flame field, it will detonate for additional damage and apply knockback, but keep in mind the flame field is consumed in the process. That means you no longer get the damage over time effect, and you can't use it to form a pyro prison. You'll want to make sure you're getting as close to a full duration of a flame field as possible before detonating it to maximize your DPS. If a pyro prison is already active, detonating one of the flame fields won't get rid of the enclosed shape, it'll just get rid of the AoE damage from that anchor point. We found ourselves casting a single blazing blast at enemies near edges or ahead of low health enemies running away so that we could use the impact and knockback of the Flaming Meteor, triggering the flame field to kill that enemy or knock them into the void. Finally, there's the Human Torch's ultimate ability, Supernova. When used, you enter a limited time supernova state that, on cast, deals a good chunk of damage to nearby enemies. While in this state, Plasma Body will cost 0 energy to use, and any flame fields generated by your Blazing Blast attacks will transform into flame tornadoes that deal substantial AoE damage. You can rapidly stack these, but keep in mind you can't have more than 4 active tornadoes at a time. Casting a 5th Blazing Blast will immediately end the oldest active one. We found that the best time to use this ability is when enemies are in confined choke points or already CC'd by another ally ability, such as a Groot ultimate. The stacking damage from these tornadoes can absolutely burst down most characters, but on their own, they don't offer much of a threat if you can quickly get away from them. It's also important to know that while Supernova is active and you're making flame tornadoes from these flame fields, you can't use your Pyro Prison since those flame fields are technically being consumed. Your time in this state is very limited, essentially enough time to get off 7 or 8 blazing blasts before you're back to normal, so bursting groups of enemies or an isolated immobile target is the name of the game. The Human Torch also has 2 team-up abilities. First is United Siblings, a team-up with the Invisible Woman. This one everyone should know by this point, as the 3 other members besides Invisible Woman get this. It provides the Human Torch with an active ability that allows him to regain bonus health, and for a character that is pretty squishy but likes to dive in to finish off enemies, this team-up can quite literally save your life. The second team-up, Omega Fire, is one you gain access to when Storm is on your team, and allows you to turn her Hurricane ultimate into a larger burning hurricane that hits much harder while also amplifying any of your own flame tornadoes her hurricane passes over. What's even cooler about this ability is how intuitive it actually is to activate, which is good given your team has to expend 2 ultimates to make use of this. Once the Human Torch goes Supernova and casts a Flame Tornado, Storm can target that tornado to immediately spawn in her ultimate right on top of that position. This method allows the Human Torch to set up some great tornado positions to spawn in on, while Storm effectively gets a much quicker cast time on her ultimate. If you didn't want to do it this way, you can of course still have Storm cast her ultimate as usual, and if she moves into an active flame tornado, her hurricane will take on the flame effect. It's just nice that the game provides opportunities for both players to be in control of where and when this team-up happens. Now, understanding a character's moveset is one thing, but putting them into practice is another thing entirely. Thankfully, most of the Human Torch's kit is straightforward, but you have to be very aware of your limits with this hero. Being out in the open, especially higher in the air, will make you an absolute sitting target for characters like Hela and Punisher, so your game plan should be more like an Iron Man. Make use of cover by hugging terrain and buildings, dipping into alcoves, and peeking from behind obstacles. You also need to keep in mind that you aren't a long-range duelist like Iron Man. You need to be playing more mid-range, where at a moment's notice, you can Flaming Meteor into close range for a burst kill or get out of a fight entirely. You don't want to spend a lot of time too close to the ground either, as keeping a relatively high vantage point lets you set up your flame fields and pyro prisons more accurately. Again, this all depends on what sort of enemy heroes are holding sightlines on positions you'll likely need to be using. Don't be afraid to get in there and fight up close with your team if they are there supporting you. Your basic attack excels at close range and really lays the hurt down on squishy heroes such as healers or other duelists when landing those condensed shots. The single biggest mistake we feel most players are going to make the first time they play Human Torch is haphazardly using his Flaming Meteor dive. Using this too early or without triggering a flame field explosion is going to do very little damage and set you up for death not even a second later. Really try to save the ability mainly for escape, but keep an eye out for opportunities to burst characters just on the cusp of receiving that burst heal they need. When all else fails, keep an eye out for players walking too close to pits, because you come at them so fast with this ability that it's almost a guaranteed kill, knocking players off the map. Deny, harass, and burst. Those are the 3 words that should guide how you turn up the heat with the Human Torch, and if you can master all 3, you'll truly be an annoyance to the enemy team. So there you have it, everything you need to know to master the Human Torch. As I mentioned before, we already have a video for the thing live on the channel, and if you haven't checked out our Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman guides, you can see those as well. With those, you have a full understanding of the Fantastic Four. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.